Thank you, Haroon, and thank you, Haroon, and thank you everyone for joining to come and be part of this amazing event where we get to catch up and reconnect again and continue the journey of ensuring that more women are in the mediation conversation. So allow me to take us through our journey and allow me to read even as so as to capture every detail of what we possibly have wished to communicate. So first of all, I'm honored to be part of this discussion as I was honored to be one of those that compiled all the great works that all of us, many of us who are here, contributed to the conversation today, and I'm really excited that we get to look at our own work, not to criticize it, but to add to it and to remind ourselves of the journey and how far we have come. And I hope that you have had time to read the book and that it indeed captured your great contribution throughout the conference, the survey, and even the workshops. As this journey began all the way back from the survey to workshops and eventually the conference, and today we actually have the book which compiles all our thoughts and our ideas coming together. It was very tough to it was very tough to pick out content as all of it was such a significant, unique contribution. So it was very interesting to be able to capture the narratives from the grassroots. It was very interesting to be able to capture the experiences of women in Cameroon amidst war and their attempts to seek peace and mediation, to the tales of Afghan and the tales of how men are increasingly encouraging their women to work, and subsequently seeing more women in that space of mediation. For many, there was evidence of progress. There was evidence of progress, and for countries like Mongolia, one of the most peaceful countries in the world, it was interesting to observe how they did it and how they continue to do it. Also, very sad to hear the narratives of the terror on women on the internet landscape, to capture just how many women still in a space where expression is free, these women have not had full power to express in the absence of ridicule and cyberbullying. Friends, this shows we really, really have a long way to go, and so we cannot tire to converse on these issues. We come again here today, all of us, as we share our experience as we have prepared to share in this moment. So we will not obviously regurgitate all that we have been saying and what has already been said, but literally to take a look at our journey, especially the authors who have informed a lot of the content in this book, and eventually to chatter, to add or subtract, and of course to forge a way forward. Of course, with the constraints of time and space, we may not accommodate everything and all, but we may not wish to leave that which is very significant, and we can only do our best. And we hope that our best will be enough, but of course, it still has to be our very best because each and every narrative matters. So it's no wonder we ensured that a lot of the papers and the writings of the authors remained the same and cut and edited and as raw as we received them, because we believe that the representation of the voice of the author is a great representation of the communities in which the authors come from. So allow me, as we introduce this very, very great panelist of the authors who have contributed to the wonderful book that you're seeing on the screen, I shall go step by step, leading us into the writers of a lot of the papers that are still here, even as we continue to converse and to amplify the voices of women in mediation. So allow me to start with Emilia. Emilia, are you present? Okay. as Emilia prepares, or as we wait for Emilia to come, I would love to engage Aida. Aida, are you in the house?
Yeah, I am. I'm here.
Hi, Aida. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Very well. So we had quite a lot from you during the conference, and you informed quite a lot of the content, especially from the narratives as well from the IT space. Did you feel that the experiences of women, especially in the online space, were well captured in this? But before you answer our question, please do take us through your journey and just a summary of what you wrote, so that those who may not have been there can actually get a sneak peek of your wisdom.
Well, thank you so very much, Nima. And good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everybody. So my name is Aida Bukavoza, and I am from Uganda, and I do found and a team lead for an organization called Idea Gen and Technology Initiative. Well, Nima, I missed some bit of the question. Do you want to repeat that for me, please? Thank you.
So first of all, my question was, did you feel that the experience of women, especially in the online space, were well captured in the book? But before we get into all that, answering all that, perhaps you could, for those who were not present during the conference, would you like to share just a summary of your paper?
Oh, well, thank you so much for that clarity. So, first of all, I feel like there is not so much that was really captured during the event last year because when usually, oftentimes, when we talk about, peace and security, we forget the part that we are in a digital age where digital transformation is, progressing highly in changing our societies and economies. So we have to also be very keen and put pertinent interest in addressing issues when it comes to online living, because we do live, we are having such conversations, leveraging on technology, enabling us to have these conversations across, the world and across continents and countries and all regions involved. So there was a small conviction that it was actually captured. However, we may have more conversation to, address more depth when it comes to online violent extremism, because it does happen, and which infringes on the right and the full engagement on countering, these kinds of terror attacks in today's changing world of work. So just to re-echo back to what I shared last year and how the book is about, and there was so much that was talked about on AI, on how cybercrime and a lot of digital safety for people all over the world, regardless of women and girls. So the issue and what we talked about mainly with other panelists was the part that addressed the issue on use of different algorithms to read without consent of people using these particular platforms and tools. For it, there was an example on robotics that are used in war, that are fostering war. There has been questions and conversations around consent and privacy when it comes to surveillance and censorship of people using digital platforms, even those that are, especially women and girls in media progress or media institutions. Also, there was a concern on women in leadership. Of course, we do know that when women are in spaces of leadership, they do influence decision and also mediation processes. So there was such concern when it came to surveillance. And there was a key case study for Uganda where, because we were then going into the election period, and we had different examples of how, journalists, different investigative reporters, women in leadership were being brutalized and abused by forces of police in Uganda. So it became, and all these things were like, the surveillance was done using online or technology tools. So the part that talked about technology involvement towards peace building or towards security was compromised in that space. So I don't know if you want me to keep going or we shall keep on sharing more ideas, but I just wanted to pick out a few picks for those who missed out last year to see
Okay.
what we talked about when it came about, technology transformation in such spaces of peace and security towards conflict resolution.
All right. Actually, if you still have more to share, you have 10 minutes to still, share on that.
Okay.
But of course, it's in yeah. So if you still have more to share, it's okay. But
Oh,
of course,
okay.
the conversation of women, and especially the internet and them being part of the conversation online, it's very important to highlight some of the challenges that women are having to go through, even as they try to express, or even as they try to be part of the bigger conversation. So yes, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. So there has been also some different conversation when it came to digital safety of women and girls online. In terms, oftentimes we've seen online movements, and I see this a lot in Kenya, where there is a lot of call for accountability when there is like an online movement or an online campaign against different injustices and abuse when it comes to women, and there is action taken because of the social media platforms that are enabling these kinds of conversations. So that has been also one of the big things. I'm not only going to share about the challenges, so I just wanted to also give key highlights on how online platforms and technology as a whole is enabling to make sure there is peace and security and resolution when it comes to women. But also in Uganda mainly, even when we have such platforms that are enabling to make work easy for civil society and other different civil organizations, there has also been threat when it comes to infringing of users' rights by, introducing numerous big taxes on different, social media platforms. Like here in Uganda, we do have the over the top tax, which is a tax on another tax, which also acts as a barrier towards women's engagement, because not everyone can afford to pay that other extra tax on a tax. We call it OTT back here, and you can only use social media when you make that kind of payment to access the social media platforms and tools. So when such things are put in place, where the other world or the Western world is saying technology is here to ease, conversations and movements to enable women and girls to participate in such spaces, even when they're not physically there, they can tap into the digital platforms and spaces to have our voices amplified. However, governments are instead infringing on this kind of right towards access to digital use and digital penetration by putting such irrelevant taxations. There's been also a challenge, I think, which is not only limited to Uganda when it comes to affordability and accessibility to many is mainly peri-urban and rural areas of settlements, which often, I'll give an example, allow me to use a lot of Uganda because I've done some more case studies and they are very relevant. When you go like to maybe refugee settlements, you may find that even electricity to enable people use these particular platforms and is not even available in such communities. It is only limited to particular areas, making accessibility extremely hard, even when people can afford, but there is not so much that is in place for them to be able to access these particular platforms or devices. And also, I just wanted to highlight something to do oftentimes when people hear about maybe technology enhancement and leveraging on technology, it is usually people always going to the devices and the online bit of it. I say technology is just an enabler for the information and information and communication bit. So for us to talk about the full ICT is information first, then communication second, then technology comes in as an enabler. So there's been a mix of conversation to think that everything technical, but I'm talking about in terms of also information, like enabling environments to make information that is very vital. I'll give an example of how COVID-19 came up, and we're basically leveraging on information technology, making it as an enabler for us to make sure that we can hear it through communications. So I just wanted to put that to light. So and maybe lastly for now, I would talk about the digital insecurity, mainly online gender-based violence and online extremism. So oftentimes when women come up, especially when they are feminist power women, there's been a lot of infringing on their right in terms of, putting them down because people go into their technology history. For example, in their past, maybe they posted something on their social media accounts and it is used against them to make sure they are pulled down. And this has been happening a lot when it came to women in leadership in Uganda, because we just recently concluded elections, and a few days, I think couple of days, we had a swearing testimony ceremony for the new parliament and the new ministers and the entire cabinet and plus the president. So people are still pinching on women's history of 10 years back in regards to what has been happening in their digital life to make it against them, so that they can still be threatened to put their power to use to enable more women to speak up. So this is also a very huge threat when it comes to their digital safety, because they use it in terms of cyberbullying, in terms of, identity theft, impersonation. There is a lot of surveillance to women and girls. We have these stories over and over and often in Uganda. And I think it's a general issue when it comes to that, and an issue of privacy plus brutality when it comes to female investigative reporters. We have conversations. Yeah, we've had scenarios where female investigative reporters have been, harassed sexually online. Yeah. And there is not so much about, digital criminalization of such injustices. There's not been a normal conversation to tell people that just because someone didn't touch my breasts, it doesn't mean that I'm not hurt. People have been forced to leave these online platforms. Very people who have been giving us information in the media industry, who have made access to information more visible and easy for others who cannot afford to get to that. But there has been a lot that has been talked about, and they have quit. So these trends are not giving us a very good number for people when we are talking about bridging the gender digital divide gap, if such threats do exist. For now, I'd beg to stop here. Maybe I'll add some conversation as the conversation flows.
All right. Thank you so much, Aida, and thank you for highlighting the extremes. I mean, even it's a common situation even here in Kenya, where we've seen pictures of our women leaders sort of graphically changed and altered, where they take a head and they probably post with also a naked body. So those cases are very common, and thank you for sharing that even in this conversation. So allow me to proceed to Rehema Zayed. Your paper was so great, and it informed a large part of our reference in terms of information, interesting read of the causes of conflict within the region, as we talk about issues of unemployment, issues of territory and land. And would you please share a summary of what you shared on the paper?
Hi everyone, my name is Rehema Zaid from Kenya. Actually, my paper was talking about the crisis in Ethiopia, and in the paper I had to highlight or dig deeper into the various root causes of the conflict. And thank you for this. And in summary, I would say I was looking at the different aspects. For instance, I was looking at I'll just say them randomly, not the way they appear in the paper. I looked at for example, the impact of COVID-19 on the trends of peace and security. And in this one, we were looking at, for instance, issues of mental health, the high cases of gender-based violence that have been reported in our country, I would say, and I believe maybe could be a cross-cutting issue in other parts of Africa. And so we were looking at how youth maybe are frustrated. For example, in Kenya, we had cases whereby there was some rioting in schools immediately when high school children reported. So we're just trying to relate and see if the escalation of violence in Ethiopia, or if COVID could have had an impact on the escalation of violence in Ethiopia, although we believe that the postponement of election due to COVID was one of the reasons. But why the anger for people to really engage in conflict and harm one another. So could this stress, this high stress levels people have been accumulating, and it has not been, it has never happened in history that we are always indoors. For example, it was not easy, for example, in Kenya, having spouses stay for long hours locked in their homes. So we are trying to look at how all these factors could relate to the escalation of violence in Ethiopia, and at the same time, it is very important for researchers to look critically on the impact of COVID on the trends of peace and security at the Horn of Africa. And second, we were also trying to look at the conflict from a gender lens, and it was evident that there is variation on the impact of conflict for the different genders. And citing this example, there was use of warfare tactics, rape of women, raping women, and starving children. So in this scenario, we are trying to see how women can be empowered more, so that they are able to, they're not only seen as victims in a scenario where there is conflict, but people who can make valuable solution. And then the other part we were looking at, and this could be, we could come up with many solutions, like engaging women in designing of programs. And this is right from at all levels, not only as mobilizers, but engaging women meaningfully at all levels. That is right from designing of programs till when the program is closing down. And you yourself, you can consider or brainstorm the many ways women can be engaged. And also the issue of cyber security came in. And as the previous speaker from Uganda just said, how women are intimidated online. And I think she said it so clearly, like, for example, as a woman, someone is trying to raise a point on a certain issue, and instead of people responding to the issue, now they start attacking her personality. Maybe people will ask, are you married? Like, they'll ask you questions that attack your sexuality, your identity. Are you married? Like, you've gone to you've gone to bed with how many men? Like, and then they say, okay, there is this man, they do Photoshop, and they say this man is your boyfriend. And this is a way of intimidating women and devaluing them, because that woman you're trying to attack and doing a Photoshop could be married to someone else. So I think people, they should engage on issues and not attack women based on their identities. I think that is being a coward. And then I think the other important issue we were looking at is how our identities affect us. And in this scenario, we were looking at how, for example, people use the stereotype theory, which creates threats to individuals. For example, in this scenario of Ethiopia, we were seeing the Tigray who are being attacked, not because you are like you've wronged anyone or wronged the state, but they were being targeted just because you are from Tigray, from the Tigray ethnic group. So we were seeing how tribalism can affect conflict, and how we should be very keen to ensure that we don't harm people just because of their identities. And I think another important point was how we can adopt the local traditions, conflict resolution mechanisms that are in place to resolve conflict. This does not mean that we don't welcome our partners or the international community, but we can always complement this also with the traditional conflict mechanism. And for example, to resolve the Tigray crisis, and also the use of non-violence. If all of us in our daily lives, we can try to, there is a model in peace building adopted from USAP, it's called spheres of influence. If, for example, I start peace on my own, I be a kind person, and then, for example, as a mother, I'm able to influence positively the lives of my children. I'm able to influence positively my neighbors and other people around me. And then it continues right from maybe the grassroots level, you go to ward level, county level. So in general, I would say each one of us has a responsibility to contribute to global peace. And I don't think if there is any major point that I've left. If there is, and you need further explanation, I'm more than willing to speak out.
Thank you very much, Rehema, for that. I mean, it was very interesting to read what you, the entire paper and the stereotype. And of course, I like that you mentioned eliminating prejudice as a way to conquer conflict. As we understand each other and we eliminate some of our prejudices, then we are able to coexist peacefully. Maybe you could share something on that in your 4 minutes that remain.
You're saying I should? Please come again.
So I know on the paper you spoke on prejudice and how
Yeah.
eliminating prejudice can be a way to, as a way of non-violent way of eradicating conflict or limiting conflict. Maybe you could also speak a bit on that in your 4 minutes.
Okay. Basically, I would say we should not give blanket condemnation to people based on like, don't judge someone based on what the larger group is doing. Let's consider people as personalities. And maybe if I'm to give a very specific example, maybe if you've interacted with maybe a group of women who, for example, in Koinange, who are not morally upright, maybe who are a group of women who have more than one partners, then when you see another woman and she's maybe trying to express her point, or she's in her capacity as a leader, she's trying to express a certain point, don't condemn her based on your beliefs about women. Sometimes it's good to be very specific so that people can understand. If you've seen women sleeping with many men, don't judge that woman you are seeing in leadership based on your other interactions with women. Just look at a person. For example, it is Rehema, look at me as Rehema, and don't bring other issues and judge me based on what you've seen. And another good example will be maybe Muslims. For example, if you see me wearing a hijab, and because people, to some extent, there's some misunderstanding about terrorism and Islam. So if you see me wearing a hijab, yes, I believe religion could be part of my identity, but don't judge me because of the bad things done, for example, by Al-Shabaab, by the terrorists. So let's try to separate an individual from the perceptions we have of a certain group. Just look at me as Rehema, and don't bring in other perceptions that you've gotten either through misconceptions, and then you start associating those your perceptions, the negative perceptions, with the individual. I think that is it's clear.
Yes, it is clear. Thank you very much, Rehema.
You're
And
most
allow me to go next to Zaman. You have been part of the construction of the book, and literally you have read all this work, and you have also spoken very well about the evolution of how women have now been have gotten into the space where they are now in workspaces, and as opposed to how culture interfered with women working, now men are actually encouraging their women to work. So do share a little bit about a summary of your paper as well.
Well, thank you so much, Nimo. Thank you, Aida. Thank you, Rahima. It was really a nice presentation. Actually, I learned a lot. And thank you, Mr. Harun, for organizing and hosting this important session. And also thanks the other colleagues who worked with us and who organized this event. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I'm Zaman, working as a project manager with the Afghanistan Forensic Science Organization based in Kabul, Afghanistan. It is my privilege and honor to talk in today's review of book, and also I will discuss on the women mediation in Afghanistan. As introduction, I can say that almost 50% of the Afghan women, Afghan population is female. The Afghan culture is primarily a patriarchal society where males play a dominant role in decision makings and also leadership positions, and also enjoying the higher status and opportunities in the country. Sadly, during the past 42 years of violence and protracted conflict, the woman's suffering has been beyond description. So in the past 20 years, some positive changes in the areas of education, employment, also women who took really good position in the body of government, and there was really also in the case of regarding the human rights, and we also taken some really good positions, and it is kindly a good achievement so far. But a great deal of more works needs to be done in order to improve the quality of life of the Afghan women in the cities as well as in the rural areas. Unfortunately, some international media sources still consider Afghanistan to be one of the most challenging places for women to live. The current peace discussions between the Taliban and the government of Afghanistan have created a window of opportunity for the Afghan women's participation in peace talks and also in peace buildings, mediations, and actually still it is imperative. The Afghan women have fought a long time to play a meaningful role in their society. They have achieved milestones since 2001 in social, economic, and political fronts. So they have made relatively successful. Today, we have women as members of the parliament, women in the body of civil society, mayors, leaders who are leading different civil society organizations, and also we have women as lecturers. But the preservation of this achievement in Afghanistan became a prominent issue, particularly after the peace deal was signed between the U.S. government and also with the Taliban. However, this peace deal was signed in 2020, but after the peace deal was signed, a lot of concern raised by the Afghan women and particularly the human rights activists. However, there is an alarming concern that this achievement might be compromised during the peace deals, and also after that, we had many women gathering, and the women many peace conference, which was led by women, and they raised their concern, and also they are still worrying about the outcome and of the peace talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban. Now the reports and it shows that more than 40% of the areas are dominated by the Taliban. So the women do not have access to justice and the freedom in those areas. Also the National Action Plan, which was drafted and finalized in 2015, it is not implementing in those areas because the government do not have control, and the areas are controlling by the Taliban as a terrorist group. So still there are a plethora of reasons justifying the women concern in this regard. The first one is the Afghan peace negotiation team. There has only 4 women. So as a members in the team of 21, demanding and advocacy increase their number and enhance their role in the peace talks. So only 4 of them are women, the others are men. But still, the women actually they are quite active, and they are trying to raise their voices. But unfortunately, that the Taliban used to neglect him, used to ignore their voices. Actually, this should be done under the auspice of the UNISOR 1325 and the Afghan government National Action Plan. As I said, still there are many men who are supporting this kind of voices, and they are trying to support the women, particularly in Qatar, that they went for peace talks in 2020. But now, second, there are huge Gulf separating women who work at the top government jobs, and those women living ordinary lives in the villages of the country. This raises the question of accurately representing of the demands of the ordinary women. But this partly because the current system allows for the handful of selected women to work in the top level of the government due to nepotism and corruption. Because there are many women, and they do not have enough capability, but they are representing the woman. But some of the women who has really good experience, and they have really good ability, but they are out of the government, and the government they are not hearing their voices. And also finally, while the Afghan women have been successfully playing a critical role in the mediation local disputes, also there are doubts to whether the current batch of women negotiators might exert the same level of influence in the high-level peace talks with the religious fundamentalist groups like the Taliban. So, given the context, the responsibility of women representative in the peace talks are critical and decisive. Whether their historic sacrifices and the victimhood, it becomes important that the representative should strengthen ties with the grassroots level, and they should be empowered and play a really good leadership, and also role, particularly the role of leadership in them, should also connect themselves with the women who are living in the village, and also they have to make their voices raised, and they should support them in grassroots level. It therefore becomes imperative for the women working in civil society organizations, government, and also other entities to support and also gather the national and international attention to the cause and empower of this momentum. Only mediators can preserve the limited gains that the Afghan women have obtained mediations also in the past 2 decades. This no, the whole focus nowadays is on the peace talks and those women who went to to Qatar, and they are representing the women, and some of the women who remained in Afghanistan. They have really big concern about the return of the Taliban in the country, because in the last, particularly when the peace talks started in Qatar, and then the Taliban started their target killing, particularly the women, human rights activists, and also the journalists. So now the women, they have really big concern. They're not, even in Kabul, which is quite safe, that they're not, they have really big problem to go, for example, into their offices and to organize a public gathering, and also even the women who are working in the media, they have big concern about their personal security, because the Taliban, they're and also fundamentalist groups here in Kabul, and they're targeting and killing the Taliban. But finally, as a recommendation, I can say that the Afghan women should make a greater platform of communication among themselves, actually, that to strengthening their unity, and also raise their voices and support their participation in peace talks. Thank you so much. It was quite short, but if you have you have question, then I'm here to respond to your question. Thank you so much, Nima.
Thank you very much, Zaman, for that summary, just to keep everyone updated, especially those who didn't make it when you did your last presentation or haven't yet had a chance to read the book. Interesting that you highlight the issues of not the most qualified women make it to the top mediation, and of course the challenges that women are still not being taken as seriously, even if they're still, yes, accepted doing the mediation. And so it means that we still have some way to go. So back to all the panelists, do you feel that all this has, I mean, through the survey, through the conference and the workshop, do you feel that all this representation of what we are sharing was captured very well throughout the process?
Yeah, just to step in, although I've just had an opportunity not to read critically, I've just had an opportunity to scan through the papers. I think it is very important for you to strongly emphasize that despite the fact that we are having good policies in place, right from the international to maybe, I would say in Kenya, even at the county level, like for instance, we're having county action plans in prevention of violent extremism. But why is it that women have not been successfully engaged in, for instance, in prevention of violent extremism? So it is very important for the policymakers to identify what are some of the barriers that are hindering successful participation of women, and I would say generally in peace building. So I think more investment on research on that is needed. Otherwise, all the good policies will remain rhetoric, and we will just be singing year in, year out, and next time it will be 40 years. So it's very important to analyze what are some of these barriers.
moving in circles.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. And that was just a short break as we usher in our next speaker. And Rose and Asrat, are you present? Are you ready to share your summary? Maybe let's start with Asrat.
Neema, thank you very much. Start with again.
All right. Yes, Anne. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Anrose Usamba, and I'm the Executive Director of Uzalendo Africa, a Pan-Africanist youth-led organization based in Mombasa. And we try and empower young people to be transformational leaders of this country and also to be citizens of integrity for this country. So my paper mainly was as a result of a high-level meeting that we had previously convened in December. And so in the high-level meeting, we were basically trying to unpack the nexus between UN Resolution 1325, that is WPS, and YPS, which is 2250, because we believe there was an overarching role that they feed into each other. And so in this meeting, really, we had great people. We had amazing women from all over the world, where we had experts and also we had grassroots women. And we had quite a number of countries represented: Tanzania, Uganda, Ethiopia, Asia, and Kenya. And what we were trying to do basically was to look at the status of the implementation for the two resolution in different contexts, so that we can make a comparative analysis and also encourage learning from each other, which we're now calling peer-to-peer learning. And I'll say it was a quite eye-opening meeting, because then we realized that some of these challenges that women peace builders face actually cut the cross. The geographical difference is what actually could be the difference. And we had some of the challenges coming up really was the question of how women peace builders especially are looked at as a product of a process, as opposed to seeing women or women peace builders as partners in the peace process. And then now we were also looking at, first of all, the need for people to understand that women and youth are not a homogeneous group, that they have different capacities and roles that they play at different levels. And also looking at the issue of how do we address the intergenerational gap that has existed. And we are looking at the 3 top tier intergenerational gap, where we are saying there are established peace builders who have been in the space for the last 20 years, and there are upcoming peace builders who are in the middle level, say, have an experience of 5 years, and there's a new peace builder who has just joined or is potentially just 1 month alone, 1 month year old in the peace process. So how do we combine all these experiences, and so that we are able then to make a better environment for women peace builders? And some of the key things that really came out, especially in the participation pillar, was actually the exclusion of young women peace builders in decision-making spaces. And if I give an example of Kenya and Asia Pacific, which was given by one of the panelists, who is Miss Agatha Nathaniel, and she was giving a context whereby for the young women who find themselves in spheres or spaces of influence at a local level, are only there to tick a gender box, which is then a similar situation that was shared by the chair of the Nyali District Peace Committee, Madam Shamsa Fadil, who was a panelist then. And we actually realized that, yes, first of all, let me acknowledge that we have come a long way from including young women and women in the local peace and security structures. Like, if you give a Kenyan context, it will be the Nyumba Kumi, it will be the District Peace Committee, it will be the balozis. But the challenge then is always that we need to answer the question of why are we bringing young women and women in these structures? Are we bringing them to tick a gender box, or do these women have autonomy to make decisions in those spaces? Because those were some of the challenges now in terms of exclusion of the women in decision-making spaces. And they are constantly reminded, by the way, this space is a reserve of the men. And so the other thing then in the participation pillar mostly was lack of political mentorship within political parties for young women who are actually within the political parties. And this is actually an impediment to now what we call participation of young women in politics, because then it means if as a young woman I'm in a political party and I did not get mentorship, then I also fall prey of the social constructs of how the society is judging the women in political parties. And so that means we will not have a lot of other young women wanting to transition to also aspire or to be in the political party. And actually we were thinking, one of the ways that really we can encourage this, apart from just speaking to the registrar of political parties within these countries, or we potentially beginning to redesign our programming, or to redesigning our shift in terms of most of the times when we want to vote for our women. And I know for most feminists, we are really trying to fight and debunk this myth that women are enemies of other women. But the truth of the matter is, in the last session, actually, I think it was Madam Susan Owiro who was saying these women who get into the spaces of decision making or mediation are not accompanied, and it is the same thing for young women in political parties, because then yes, we support them until the election, and then when they get there, we forget about them because they're already there. So I feel like support should be both ways, in terms of both the ones who are not in the political parties and the ones in the political parties, so that then together we sort of have the same vibe. And then the other thing also was lack of political and budgetary commitment. Yes, we have very good policies, and I'm glad Miss Rehema pointed out, but then the political goodwill to actually implement. For example, I really don't know what happened to the peace policy that we had in Kenya. It is still lying somewhere. And then also the budgetary commitment, because again, what is not budgeted for cannot really translate to to an action. And then the fact that now, as a country, security is not a devolved function, so it solemnly lies with the national government. So how do we draw coordination efforts in terms of looping in the county government, even though this is not their mandate, but just to try and strengthen this process? And of course, we had quite some good recommendations from people in Tanzania, where they were saying the challenges are not just within the participation pillar, but even in terms of prevention of violence. Women are regarded like the last step of solving problems. And that example was given by Ms. Shadida Salum, who was then a university student from Dar es Salaam University, where she was saying, as much as they are part of this process, they only come to validate. So for me, the key takeaways really were that these issues are really cross-cutting, but then how do we find a common solution despite the different geographical locations? And we were looking at, are there models that we can borrow from maybe the Asian Pacific that have worked there that can work here? Because we were given an example of the Philippines, and we thought it was something that we could really borrow from this model. And so we had very great recommendation, like integrating the peace agenda in all programs and sectors, including the economic stimulus package. And this was as a result of Miss Jen Murutu, who is a Rotarian Peace Fellow, really talked about peace work not being funded compared to other fundings that we have. And people even gave the example of how, for example, in Kenya, we have a Uwezo Fund, we have a revolving fund, we have all these kitties for all these economic stimuluses, but we do not have one source of funding for peace building activities. And I would like to commend I think it was the UNOI, I'm not sure whether it's I stand to be corrected, but there is a fund that has been put in place by one of the international organizations so that local women peace builders and youth can be part of it. But most importantly, what we said is we cannot move the conversation of WPS without male inclusion. So that means we cannot move WPS without YPS because they marry each other. And that is why we were unpacking. So even if you look at the pillars, they're the same, sort of the same pillars. And of course, the other recommendation was peace building and conflict resolution, including addressing the structural challenges that women in workspaces face at both local and national level, but most importantly, to mainstream this conversation. Why should these two resolutions matter to local women at the rural areas? And we are thinking, what are these formulas that we are going to use to actually uplift or profile the local interventions done by the local peace builders at the grassroots level to speak to these UN resolutions, because we realize that actually there's a lot of work that go undocumented at the grassroots level, because young women peace builders and women peace builders are doing a lot of interventions, but they do not know, or they may not know, that it is actually resolution 22 22, 50, 13, 25, 25, 35, but it actually speaks to this. So we're thinking of how best can we have a database. I know Madam Catherine Chaguero from the gender department, they're collecting some of the works that have been done, but then how do we also make it, I'm lacking a word, but I'm thinking of how do we make it more public so that so many other young peace builders at the grassroots level can know that there's such an institution that is collecting recommendation, so that the good work, the good case studies cannot go or left unforgotten. And yeah, I think that will be it. I could add more as we are talking, but most importantly was then to strengthen the meaningful engagements for young people and to begin to see young women as partners in these processes, from co-creation to co-designing, so that then we own the process. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anne. I mean, moving from a space where women are just ticking boxes, we are decoration in meetings, and moving into where we are actually being listened to, we are involved very, very well. And I really like that when you say that women and young people are not a homogeneous group, different perspectives need to be had. So we have Emily and we have Asrat, Emily, Miki, and Asrat. I know, I know that we had first called you Emily to speak, and you are not there yet, but please go ahead and do share a summary of your paper, especially for the people who were not there during the last session, and also those who have not yet had a chance to read the book. Emily, are you on? Emilia, sorry. All right, so as we still wait for Emilia, Asrat, are you there? Asrat, are you present? All right, so then there was a special request to have Christine Adero from Uganda, who also informed quite a bit of what the content that is on the book. If you're available, can you unmute and share some wisdom?
Hi, sorry, Nema. I can see Emilia is back. Maybe if she can take over.
Okay, okay. Emilia, hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Karibu sana. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm happy that you're here to shed some wisdom on the wonderful paper that you shared on Cameroon. And, please give us a summary in how long? In maybe 5 minutes, so that all those who are not present
Thank you
can
very much.
get up and step back.
Okay, thank you. All right. So during the conference, the Global Peace Champions conference, I shared a paper. I presented on the paper understanding masculinities as a factor for the conflict resurgence in Cameroon. And in that presentation, in my paper, which is currently being published in the book, it talks and brings clear insight on what masculinity is. What is masculinity? Masculinities are the traits that are entitled or attributed to the male figure, and it's usually connected to situations of power, mostly the areas of power, and it affects conflict greatly because masculine traits are usually connected to violence. It's expected that a male, being male, should not cry, should use violence or force to resolve conflict or situations of war or misunderstanding, whereas these are some of the factors that push conflicts to happen in our communities. And engaging men and boys in the women, peace and security process is important, because when we make men to realize that these traits they are born with, these privileges that communities or cultures have given them based on their gender, are some of the factors that causes conflict to occur. Because take for instance, in situations of conflict like in Cameroon, the conflict was not as bad as it was until when we had experiences of militarized masculinity, where a simple activity like peaceful protest or peaceful demonstration was had, instead of requesting what was the reason why maybe young people were going out on the street while lawyers were going out on the street, the response was we saw military using force to push back the people that were on the street. And from there now we see that the conflict, the ongoing Anglophone crisis, kicked up to another level where we started having situations of killings, military going to communities and killing people. So masculine traits, which are usually used in situations of war, in conflict, to resolve situations, instead bring more conflict situations, because they tend to put people at disadvantaged positions, especially the women and the girls. Cases of rape, gender-based violence is usually on a great increase. So during my session, I shared key insights on what masculinities are, how it manifests, the different forms and types of masculinities. And it was a session where participants, because I had with me panelists on the session who spoke and gave presentations. We had the British High Commission in Cameroon, Miriam Tweed, the project coordinator at Dennis Mickey Foundation. So these presentations gave room for participants to share their experiences, ask questions, and we also came out with recommendations. And some of our key recommendations were for us as actors, for those of us who push the women, peace and security agenda, to include men and boys in the localization process of the UNSCR 1325. Since the resolution pushes for women and girls' participation in the peace processes, just talking to women and girls alone is not enough. We need to be able to go into highly masculine or militarized communities like militaries, churches, political arenas or spheres, and talk to the men dominating leaders about how they can give spaces for women to be in these positions, because women's presence in these positions will help in the decisions that are arrived at, and will also help in reducing conflicts and the effects of conflicts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amelia, and I really enjoyed reading your paper as well, as you talked about masculinities and how as a consequence, is also affecting women's involvement. So we cannot just have conversation of one gender and totally not have conversations with the other, just to understand what about culture and what about our society is causing some of the conflict areas, like even gender-based violence, rape, and all that. Thank you for that. So I'm looking at our time, and I'm feeling we will ask the panelists more questions, but right now allow me to invite Catherine Chaguero from Kenya. If you could please now share your expertise on this area, as you're working in the area of gender, and you have been with us in the journey and in the conference. As we forge our way forward, please allow us to, indulge in your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Esther, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Catherine Chaguero. I work for the State Department for Gender under the Ministry of Public Service and Gender here in Kenya. I coordinate the Kenya National Action Plan on Resolution 1325. It's been an amazing afternoon from 4 o'clock, just listening to the presenters and what they have to say. And I think, of course, the one thing that's coming out is from different aspects, the need for male engagement. As we all know, we celebrated 20 years of Resolution 1325, and what's coming out clearly is even 20 years later, after the resolution, we still have low representation of women in the security sector, in mediation, in peace committees, and we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we've been doing? How do we enhance? How do we ensure that we don't have the same narrative? Like, I think it was Andros who said 40 years later, and we're still talking about low representation of women in the peace and security sector. And so one of the things that comes out clearly from all the presentations as we were celebrating the 20th anniversary is the need for male engagement, just to make sure that we involve men when it comes to peace and security issues. As we all know, this has been a patriarchal sector for the longest time ever. And so we need to bring them on board. And I know a lot of times when we go and start talking about the women, peace and security agenda, it's very easy for us to get lost and make it look like we are forcing the issues of women on this sector. But basically, we need to bring out the aspect of equality and why there is need to have the voices of both women, the voices of men, and the voices of youth also. Another misinterpretation is that when we talk about women, peace and security, a lot of people refer to it with older women, forgetting that also we need to hear the voices of the young women. And when you're talking about Resolution 1325, and I think that's the aspect where we bring in issues of 2250. And as we know, of course, the Women, Peace and Security has 4 pillars, while the Resolution 2250 has 5. But basically, all these pillars are the same. And what we did when we were developing, I'll give an example of Kenya, is we made sure that the issues of 2250 reflect in our Kenya National Action Plan on Resolution 1325. Most countries don't have the action plan on 2250, but that doesn't mean we need to stop with the implementation of the resolution. What we can do is to see how we fit those 2 resolutions together, and then we are able to implement them alongside each other, making sure the voices of the youth are also heard, even as we are dealing on issues of peace and security. The other thing I think we really need to do is we need to have a bottoms-up approach. We need to remove this conversation from the national level and just take it to the rural women. When you're talking about mediation, and I've seen that in Afghanistan presentation, is that we feel that a lot of these women, either it's low representation, or even if we have women in this sector, then they're not able to operate from an informed position. So a lot of our programming should be focused on creating capacity building the rural women, because when we have the bottoms-up approach and conflict happens in the community, then we can see Resolution 1325 and 2250 working effectively from the community level, and then we have it also escalate to the top. And how can we do this? I think we need to take advantages of the sectors that we have. For example, in Africa, we have the FemWise. FemWise does a lot of trainings on mediation. So how do we link our rural women with such organizations to make sure that they are capacity built? Number two, also, when we're doing programming, we need a lot of coordination among the civil society organizations and the state. In Kenya, for example, the county and the national, and just making sure that we are training the right. It's one thing to train, but then are we training the right stakeholders so that they are able to engage from an informed position? A lot of the things that we have seen, especially with the COVID-19, is that we really fell back when it came to gender equality, with the rise of GBV across the globe, because a lot of people were reporting on, the increase of gender-based violence in different countries, in different contexts. So we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to avoid this? Because this is the same thing we experience when it comes to election, especially in the African countries. So we need to look at our implementation from our prevention strategy, so that it doesn't matter what humanitarian disaster we face, or even if a country is going into election, then we already have prevention strategies that are able to, not curtail the gains that we have made across many years. And then data collection is very important. What is our baseline? What are we saying? If we're saying we have an increase of women in peace committees, an increase of women in mediation, and an increase of women in the security sectors, what do we mean by an increase? I'll give an example. When we started the Kenya National Action Plan, we had a representation of 14% of women in the peace committees. By the time it was ending in 2018, we had a representation of 29%. That's good, because it helps us know where are we moving from once we move from 29%, where are we moving through? So data will enable us to know, are we making progress? Are we making any changes in the community? What are we doing well, and where can we improve? So encouraging a lot of data collections. And then we have the Global Network of Women Peace Builders localization tools that just basically explains how you take this conversation to the community and how you are able to implement Resolution 1325, 2250, all these resolutions at the community level. So my recommendation would be, let's look at the guidelines for the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, and let us see how we can use it in terms of creating awareness at the community level. I like what Guinea has done. Guinea has what we call the bottom-up approach, but what they do is they bring in, during the celebration of 1325 in October, they bring women from across the country to just come and have a conversation on what they're doing in their different regions. That therefore means a lot of learning from each other. So this is learning within the country, but maybe we move it further, and just like this forum, able to learn what the different countries, what Uganda is doing, what Kenya is doing, what Afghanistan is doing, so that we can learn from each other on what strategies are you using that are working, that has helped you increase representation, or increase the implementation process, or increase awareness in your different sectors. So let's use such forums also to be able to learn from each other. Also, we have, I'll give an example of Kenya. Of course, the Kenya National Action Plan lies under the Ministry of Public Service and Gender, but we work very closely with other ministries, and therefore just encouraging, even as you're doing your work, encouraging governments to own these resolutions. And in that doing, then we are able to know that we have government buy-in, and with government buy-in, of course, coming up with policies, passing them is very easy, because it's one thing to come up with policies, but then it's another thing to implement it. So not just developing policies, but also making sure that these policies are being implemented on the ground. Also, I like what the lady from Uganda was talking about, the digital platforms. I think that's the one area where we've not, that has not been very active, I'd say also on our part. And we need to also really see how we can engage that forum, and how we can use it to be able to create awareness on the policies that are there, but also to create awareness. For example, I should give an example of GBV. How are we able to deal with that from that angle and make sure that government then gets to be able to run with such a forum? In Kenya, yes, and we have the peace policy, it's in existence, but we need to create more awareness, because I always say if we at the national level don't know, then it's very hard for the rural women to know. So we need to make sure that we have these policies in place, but also to create more awareness on it and just let people know how they are able to benefit from them and that they exist and what they entail. I think that's my contribution. So over to you, Nima.
Thank you very much, Catherine Chaguero. That was really, really amazing. And I like that you highlighted, even as we talk about women, we do need to consider young women, and we also consider the maturer women, so as to be able to ensure that everyone is actually involved in the conversation, and all these recommendations and all that. I think they are very great recommendations. A question here from someone just asked, as a government official from State Department of Gender, which policy from Global Peace Champions interested you, and will you champion for implementation?
Could you come again?
So someone said, as a government official from State Department of Gender, which policy from this entire conversation interested you, and will you champion for implementation of it?
I would say what interested me most was the digital platform. The lady, forgive me for not remembering the name, but she was talking about the digital platform. And I think that's something that we have not taken keenly. You know, COVID-19 has taught us to the need that we've all gone digital. And therefore, I think it's one of those things that we really need to embrace and really need to work on. It's something as a secretariat we haven't focused more on. So it's a conversation I'd like to continue with her. It really interested me on that one.
Amazing, amazing. And it's great that you're here to be able to pick up all these different ideas, and I'm happy that you're able to, to be part of us. So I'm gonna open the floor to all of us participants, because all our information is going to inform additional or subtraction for the content. So please do go ahead and shoot questions to our amazing panelists as well as our expert here. So just unmute and shoot. Arun, do you have a question? Oh, okay. Okay, Minette, please go ahead. The silence, either it's fully understood or nothing was understood at all. I'm gonna take the premiere. So I'm gonna shoot to our able panelists who have informed a lot of the content on the book. Do we feel that all this has spoken, all this that we have spoken has been captured well in the book? And where do we envision what next after this? After coming together, what would you recommend to be the next progress? So we can start with the order as we started. Aida, take it away.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Nima, once again. So you've done really great. I want to thank the entire team that everything that we had a conversation on and about last year has been really pretty much captured for me. And I like that different panelists kept on talking about the pertinent issues when it came to women, girls, cyber crime, cyber violence, online extremism. I'm very passionate about when it comes to the digital transformation. That's why I keep on repeating myself. But all the other things that are very pertinent in terms of, addressing the issues and the challenges that do affect women in processes of, decision, mediation, and also peace and security. I want to say it's a very good job. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amazing to hear that from you. And Rose?
Thank you so much, Neema. Really, I will say yes. The book captured most of what we really talked about in December, and now you're asking about how we're going to take it forward. I feel like with the presentation that each one of us has made, then it has given us the urge, the zeal, the passion to press the buttons that we were previously pressing. And if we were pressing them slowly, then it has given us more power to keep pressing, and the affirmation and a pat on the back that yes, we were actually doing it. We were doing a good job all together. And just like Aida, I'm also very passionate about digital economy and digital security. And so for me, really, I am looking at knowing that Aida is here and she's also doing the same thing. So it try to see how we can advance this conversation, to see what she can learn from the concept of online movement building here in Kenya that we have used a lot in supporting the young women, especially in cases of TAVA, which is tech-assisted violence against women, and potentially how then she can also learn maybe from how we've used online spaces as youth and young women in Kenya to sort of prevent violent extremism. And I can equally learn from her and the good work that she and Ruth, her team, are doing in digital security, and especially security for the journalists and the bloggers. So yeah, it's quite amazing. And I'm just looking at how do we build back on each other's back, for lack of a better English word.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rose, Anna Rose.
Thank you. I love that as well. So there'll be a lot of inter-exchange, inter-learning, and this conversation is definitely going to keep on and online. So let's meet all online as we support each other in our different work. Rehema?
Thank you so much, team. Actually, in summary, my key takeaways are three. And first of all, we need to be very proactive in coming up with data. And this should be encouraged right from grassroots levels up to, I would say, even the national to international level, because if we talk and we not have facts to support our discussion, then we'll not be considered as people who are serious. And second, I would say we should try to create opportunities for innovative solutions for women, so that I remember there was a quote that was saying that how did we reach to a place whereby the women security agenda has been converted to, was it mileage? Like women we are just going there to get bus fare, but you're not interested. So we should really try to come up with the innovative solutions so that women can have a buy-in to this goal or to these policies, and not just by the way. And I believe we are, in one way or the other, we are contributors to how women feel, whether like it's just by the way or we are part and parcel of this journey. And third, I would say we should really encourage and to see and open opportunities for collaborations at different levels. And I think that's it. Congratulations, ladies, for the great effort. Cheers.
Amazing, amazing. And thank you for that. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that, and it reminded me there's a whole song dedicated to women here in Kenya called Tunakula Fare, which means we are just eating bus fare. and
Yeah.
we're saying no to that. Yeah. So thank
True.
you for that. Here's to more collaboration for us.
Mm.
There's a question here for Catherine, and I think we should maybe allow her to answer as we all, sum up and forge our way forward. So to Yato Oasis of Hope Foundation asked, my question goes to gender officer from Catherine. There are serious human rights breach within Baringo and Laikipia County, where women and youth and elders are mostly affected. Is there a package on, since this is an Endorois community through our organization we've been? Okay. We've been seeking any help, any form of help. So the question is on the chat, but it goes straight to Catherine. So as you sum up and share your insight, please do also feel free to answer that.
Three things I would take from here is just let's, we always talk about creating awareness, but I think let's increase ownership, because it's one thing to create awareness. And like Rehema said, the meetings turn into spaces where people come and just get transport reimbursement and leave. But then when they own the process, they are able to really see what is important, what it means to them, why they need to really run with this resolution, and how they can actively participate. So let's increase ownership of both Resolution 1325 and 2250. Still, I insist on cross-learning and sharing experiences. From there, you're able to see what works in one region, what can we pick from it, and how can we contextualize it to fit our area, and be able to also implement it maybe in that way. So the cross-learning and sharing experiences is very important. And then the coordination approach, it's one thing to implement, but it's another one when you're coordinated, so that you make sure you're all saying the same thing. You're working together to make sure that even as you implement this Resolution 1325, you're talking to each other. That one will help make sure that even, for example, a state in NASTE, you're not just fixed in one area and the other area is not benefiting, but you spread out yourselves and are able to see what works where and how. To answer to Yato, we have structures in place. We have what we call government, the county gender sector working groups. Baringo has one, a very active one. I would encourage you to reach out to that forum, because in that forum, we have state and non-state, and you'll be able to meet county government officials. The national government also sits there, but we also have development partners who sit there, and civil society organizations. And through there, you'll be able to see what programs have they put in place when it comes to the humanitarian rights of women and girls. And if there is none, then you can be able to guide and just let them know how they are able to inform their programming to be able to deal with the specific problem of the Endoroi. So please reach out to the County Gender Sector Working Group. I'll send you my direct number, then I can be able to link you up with the systems that are already in Baringo County and Laikipia County as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you for great insights there. And I do hope that your question is answered. And yeah, so we'd like to have 1 minute to Emilia and 1 minute to Zaman, and then we'll hand over back to Harvard.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much, Nima. Actually, during the process of developing this book, I read articles. Personally, I learn a lot. I found it the book really valuable, and it's really good tools which can bridge the Afghan women to the African countries. And here in Afghanistan, we can learn a lot from from those challenges, and also listen from the experience that you have. there, and also we can learn from the lesson that you also learned, that also the progress you had so far. Actually, I plan to print out the book and then disseminate for the civil society organizations, particularly the organization which is leading by women, and also to share the book with the women who is working in a high position inside the government. This is really good, actually, for advocacy, and also to go forward with considering the challenges. So it was really good opportunity, at least for me, during the process of developing this book. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Zaman, and we really honor you, especially for being part of the entire process. Emilia, they say ladies first, but also ladies conclude. So let's have you have 1 minute to just sum it all up as I hand over to Harun. Okay, so Emilia is not present, so it leaves me to sum it up. Thank you so much for being part of this panel. Thank you so much for engaging here on the chat. And right now, I would love to hand it back to Harun.
Hi guys, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you everyone for joining for today's session. We highly appreciate for your response for this session and also participate in this panel. As we wind up for this session, we request you to do a quick checkout and just drop your key takeout from this session. What lesson have you learned, and anything which you feel like you have to share back? So you can use a chat box, post a key takeaway from this session, then we'll be free to leave. For this session, we will upload it to our YouTube channel, and we'll send link to your email. For those who came late, you can access this session in the next few hours from now. So we can just do a quick checkout. A key takeaway from this session. So as you do a quick checkout, we'll play for you some few music. So just quick checkout, and you can just leave it at your own pleasure. Thank you.